It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by Agile Dad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. Hello, everyone. I had someone recently contact me and they asked if I had a spy in one of my classes. Now, let me explain why. I thought it was kind of funny. I'm like, well, why do you say there's a spy? And they told me about a recent blog post that was published. And they said the blog post is almost identical to a section that you teach in your advanced Scrum Master class. And I said, when you say almost identical, is it identical? And this person cordially looked at me and said, I think it is. So they gave me a link to the article, and I'm not going to call out who published the article because, well, it was a competing large company that does training and coaching. So I'm humbled that they found the information great, but at the same time, it's just really interesting to me to see. Now, I don't know. I'm not going to throw out an accusation. I mean, maybe they have someone in there who's a wizard who came up with the exact same 7 things that I teach, who taught them in the exact same order that I teach them. I mean, they put some little cushiony paragraphs around it to kind of, give it some fluff. And they also didn't repeat everything word for word the same way that I did. So I think I'm going to talk to you about these same things. So they titled their article and subjected it, something along the lines of um, improving team velocity. That's all I'm going to say. And for me, I don't necessarily position it that way. I position it as pitfalls that leadership and teams face when trying to figure out how much work they can consume, which basically is the same thing, right? It's just different title, same information, which is really interesting. So let's get into this and let's start talking about these because I think each one is more interesting than the next. So number one, right out of the gate, is stop obsessing over metrics and reports. Now, what I can tell you is I can count the number of times on many hands where I've gone into organizations and I hear people say, "Can we get access to the Jira?" Leadership who wants to know exactly what's going on. Can we have access to the team's work? Can we have access to the burn down charts? Because they want to have control over what's going on. Now, honestly, these are people who probably read Jeff Sutherland's book, Twice to Work in Half the Time, and they're wondering when they're going to see that 1,800% increase in productivity and when they're going to see that velocity increase because they want to make sure that the metrics are proving what Jeff said in his book. Now, what I can tell you is people who start getting crazy about metrics are usually the ones who are gonna cause the most problems when it comes to an agile implementation. Because the truth is, when you start asking people to do more and they start having fewer people work on things and their expectation is that they're going to work on more and they start more things at the same time and they don't get obsessive about swarming and getting work done, what winds up happening, of course, is the metrics take over we start focusing on output instead of outcome. And I think that's a cardinal sin, right? If we're going to be agile about this, we need to focus on outcome and we can't obsess about metrics. We need to throw metrics to the door and forget about velocity for a time being, right? I mean, yeah, we should be able to forecast out and figure out how many points a team could do during a sprint. But I don't know that beyond that, velocity is an incredible, valuable metric, right? It gives you some information that you could use in burn up forecasting and other things like that, but it's not the end all be all. And anyone who says, I just need my team to double their velocity, it's kind of a crazy thing to ask for, right? So leadership should not be obsessive about metrics and reporting. They shouldn't be asking for access to daily information in Jira. There, I said it. Coming in right over the top, number two, automate as much as possible. At least that's the way I teach it. In this article, it says automate everything. So I'm talking about regression testing, unit testing, any kind of automated test suites that we can put together that's going to help us. Whether it's at the acceptance test level, at the unit test level, at the regression level, we need to make sure we're automating as much as possible. Because the truth is, without automation, I can tell you right now, the number one bottleneck, the number one kink in our system is typically testing. So we need to make sure that people are aware that the expectation is going to be that they can test each other's work, but also that we automate as much as possible to help deliver testing results in a very short time frame so that people can continue on, especially if they're building software projects, right? Okay. Number three talks about resolving issues and impediments and focusing on that. Now, what I can tell you is this is interesting because I hear oftentimes where the scrum master comes in and says, it is in my job description and it is my role and responsibility to remove the impediments for the team. And I'll never forget this story. And I tell it all the time when people talk about this. I remember a scrum master that was sitting with her team, and one of the developers needed some more water. So he held up his cup in the air, he held up his empty water bottle, and she ran, sprinted to him, took the water bottle and went and got it filled and brought it back to him. I'm like, what was that all about? Did you lose a bet? And she says, no. She says, it's my job to remove their impediments. And if he needs more water, that's an impediment. I don't want him to have to get up and get it himself. And I just stopped for a minute and stared at her. I said, you're kidding, right? And it was just so amazing to me to see how, I don't want to use the word lazy, but how lazy this developer was and how eager this new scrum master was to assist. Now, don't get me wrong, she was really good at what she did, but sometimes you need to let the team solve the problems themselves, right? So I think sometimes we don't allow things to happen so that people can realize, hey, something happened. And we go on this bender to try to fix everything, which I understand. I get it. As a scrum master, especially as a new scrum master, you don't want to, the last place you want to be is behind the person who says, well, it was your job to resolve it. What did you do? Right? We don't ever want to be in that position. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's important for the scrum master to behave like a doctor. They need to be able to assess and triage and know whether someone's appendix is about to burst or if it's something that they can write a prescription and have somebody solve their own problem. Because the truth is, if we have a consistent way for tracking, managing, and resolving issues as they arise, and if people know that the team's going to be responsible for resolving some of those and that the scrum master is going to step in when they need to, it's going to help create an atmosphere of good behavior, and it's going to help people to help each other and to help themselves. So it's the difference between empowering teams and enabling teams to do what's right. So we need to focus less on what are we going to do to remove every obstacle or impediment and ask ourselves, what are we going to do to empower the team to remove every obstacle and impediment that they can so that we can join in with them and remove the remaining obstacles as needed. Okay. So let's move on to our fourth topic, which is reducing the size of work items. Now, here's the secret. The smaller the items, the easier it's going to be for them to flow through the system, right? So if we have items that are very large in size, what's going to happen is they're going to be harder for us to consume. They're going to be harder for us to process. So it's important for us to have things that are small or extra small in size. And this is a practice that comes from Kanban. We should have things that are very small and easy to consume so that we can set WIP limits and so that we can work either in a first in, first out model or in a Scrum model and see things getting accomplished as we go, creating a feedback loop, getting things to market faster so that we can increase our revenue and improve our quality along the way. It sounds so simple, right? But it's something we need to do. Speaking of which, the fifth one on the list has to do with experimenting with WIP limits. Limiting work in progress is a powerful tool that comes from Lean and Kanban. And it's important for us to teach people the nature of swarming. Now, everyone knows about the mythical man month. 9 pregnant women can't create a baby in a month. It doesn't work that way. But we also know of the concept of swarming. If you've ever seen bees or ants, how they swarm to take care of things. I mean, living in Florida, I can tell you if there's an anthill, you can blow it away with a blower off your driveway and come back out the next day, and the anthill's not only there again, but it's bigger than it was before, right? So it's just one of those things where you need to teach people about the importance of reducing context switching, the importance of figuring out how to swarm, but knowing where to draw the line to say, okay, we're going to honor the WIP limit. We're going to move on to the next item, right? So WIP limits are something that's incredibly important. Okay, number 6, which actually is my number 7, so I think they flipped those two, is pay down technical debt. Now, what's interesting about technical debt is I hear people say all the time, oh, well, we have Bobby spend 5% of his time each sprint on technical debt, and the technical debt keeps growing, and we don't know why. Maybe it's because you have one person dedicating 10% of their time to taking care of it, right? One of the things that I teach right out of the gate is that if you're going to have technical debt, you should have a technical debt sprint where you're dedicating an entire 2 weeks to the reduction and elimination of technical debt. And if you do that 2-week sprint once a quarter, you're going to see that debt reduce. You're going to see things come back up. And what it's going to do is it's going to help you identify which things are the most important that need to be addressed. And I always tell people make a top 10 list each quarter. And if it's not important enough to be in your top 10, chances are it's something that we can live without knowing, right? It's something that if it's not one of your top 10 items, you could say, oh, well, we can make that known but not resolved and move on. And if it comes up again, then we can address it as a first item in the next sprint. But many times, customers find workarounds, or we inadvertently fix things when we fix something else. There's a lot of different solutions to technical debt. So we just need to be careful and consistent about how we handle it. And finally, the last one, which is my second to last one, is experiment with pair work and with swarming, right? Don't be afraid to have people do peer reviews and pair together to solve problems. What I found is that not only is it good for cross pollination, but it helps individuals learn how other individuals work, and it helps them never have a silo where only one person knows how to do things. So it's great to, when possible, have swarming efforts, or at least at minimum pairing efforts, to get people on the same page so that they can work together to solve problems. And what I can tell you is that this works beautifully. Is there an upfront cost? Absolutely. But over the course of 3 to 6 sprints, this pays for itself. And what I can tell you is it pays for itself in a big way. So I strongly, strongly encourage you to get to know what you can do to solve all these 7 things. Talk about these things. And, like once again, like I said in the beginning, my focus on this was leadership and how they should feel about addressing these things. But this was taking it down a step more. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't know that it was direct plagiarism. I don't know that they, didn't know to give me attribution or whatever the case may be. But I'm not upset about it because it feels like to me they took it in a different direction, and the direction they took it in was good. I guess any news about these topics is good news as far as I'm concerned because it's stuff that needs to be addressed. So if you have an idea for a topic you want us to hit, let us know at agiledad.com. You can do learn more at agiledad.com. We'd love to cover your topic. And until next time, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Whatever you do take care.